So, good day everyone. My name is Diane Salvador from BS Criminology 4-3. So, this time I will report the historical perspective on correction. So, first, in 13th century, it is the securing sanctuary. And in any criminal form, murderers, rapists, and thieves to the ordinary debtor who owned a sum of money might go to church and demand shelter from the law of medieval England. So, in England at about 1468, torture as a form of punishment becomes prevalent. So, prevalent means it is the widely or commonly occurring existing or the accepted or the practices. And next is the 16th century. Transformation of criminals in England was authorized. At the end of this century, Russia and other European countries followed this system. So, sumunod sila sa sistema ng England. So, this practice was abandoned in 1835. It partially relieved overcrowding of prisons. So in 17th and to 18th century, death penalty became prevalent as a form of punishment. And in 18th century, it is known as the Age of Enlightenment. So 18th century, it is the dignity is a century of change, pagbabago. It is the period of recognizing human. It is the movement of reformation, the period of introduction of certain reforms in the correctional field by certain person, gradually changing the old positive philosophy of punishment to a more humane treatment of prisoners with innovational programs. So the gaols or jails. The term used to describe pre-trial detention centers run by English sheriffs in the 18th century in England. Next is galleys. It is the long, low, or narrow single-decked sailing ships, generally rowed by convicts. In the 16th century, this was a sort of ship used to transport convicts. So, ito yung ginagamit na pag-transport sa mga convicted persons. So, next is the hawks or the floating hell. In the 18th and 19th century, they were former vessels that housed convicts. Although the hawks were only meant to be a temporary solution to a problem, they were not entirely abandoned until 1858, or 80 years later. And the ordeal. Ordeal, it is the church alternative for a trial until the 13th century, when the accused's capacity to remain unharmed under perilous and painful tests proved guilt or innocent. Next, the early codes. So these codes, not everybody is equal in the imposition of punishment. So sa mga punishment, hindi tayo equal. And in Babylonian and Sumerian codes, or the Code of King Hammurabi, it is created as the oldest code prescribing savage punishment around 759 BC, but in fact, Sumerian codes were nearly 100 years older. The main concept of Hammurabi Code is lex talionis, which means an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, the imposition of punishment. So halimbawa nito, may ginawa kang kasalanan, kinuhanan mo yung kasama mo ng isang mata. So ang ang gagawin din nila sa iyo ay kukunin din nila yung mata mo. Kasi kung ano yung ginawa mo sa iba, yun din ang gagawin nila sa iyo. King of Ornamus Code. It is the reduced reparations of fines as well as execution, mutilation, and other severe punishment. The notion of restorative justice is also included in King Ornamus, which aims to establish lost connections between the people engaged in crime that existed before the crimes were committed. And in the Mosaic Code, the second of the ancient legal codes is still surviving the Mosaic Code of the Israelites. According to the tradition, God entered into covenant with the tribe of Israel, in which they agreed to obey his law, and his law is the 613 laws of the Old Testament, as presented by Moses in return for God's special care and protection. And this code is not only the foundation of Judean Christian moral teachings, but also a basis for the U.S. legal system. And we go for the different kinds of ordeals. So ordeal by hot water. Accused would reach into a kettle of boiling water and put out an item. This water would not burn and would not burn the accused's skin if they were innocent, but the burns would disclose their guilt if they were guilty. So, dito ang nangyayari, may mainit na tubig and then ilalagay nila yung kamay nila, kukuha sila ng item, and then if their skin burn, they are guilty, but if not burn, they were accused and innocent. And next is ordeal by hot iron. Hot iron, ito yung mga bakal. To establish their innocence, the accused persons would carry out a blazing hot iron for a certain number of paces without getting hurt. So tatayo sila sa mainit na iron. And then, accused person would carry a blazing hot iron pag sila tumayo, pag hindi sila nasaktan, they were innocent. Pag nasaktan sila, and then they are guilty for their mistakes. Next is ordeal by cold water. If the accused were thrown into a pool, they would sink if they were innocent and float if they guilty. So, pag sila lumubog, inosente. Pag nag-float sila, they were guilty. And next is ordeal by the sacrament. An accused priest would be compelled to accept the communion wafer. If the accused clergy member was guilty, they were supposed to choke on the sacrament. But if they're innocent, they were meant to take without difficulty. And let's go to the two rival prisons. In history, there are two rival prisons. The Auburn prison system, also referred to as the congregate system. The inmates sleep in their own cells at night and work in shops during the day. And the quiet was strictly maintained. So tahimik lang sila sa kanilang mga pinagtutulugan during night and during they are in their shops. And next is the Pennsylvania prison system. Prisoners were kept in single cells day and night, where they lived, slept, ate, and received religious education, also known as the solitary system. It was also necessary to maintain complete quiet. The Bible is mandatory reading for all inmates. And that's all. Thank you guys, sir, and God bless.